All right, and we're live with Computer Vision Decoded episode 5. If you are here on LinkedIn Live, I'm really excited because today we're going to go over a topic that we have a lot of questions about over time, and you have a unique experience, a unique opportunity to ask questions. I encourage anyone to chime in on the chat there. We'll be watching it as we go along, but we're going to talk about capturing images for 3D reconstruction. And so as we dive into this, there might be some things that are not necessarily clear, and that's fine, but you can also go and download the guide. We put it in the notes to this episode on the LinkedIn Live description for this episode here, and go ahead and download the PDF. It's not one for one what I'm going to show you on the slide deck. It's very close, but the slide deck is just a presentation form, but the downloadable guide is what you're going to want. Now, if you're listening to this on podcast later on, or you can go find this on the YouTube channel, I'll make sure I also have those in show notes as well. But just know if you listen to the audio version, you're going to want to go download that guide to kind of follow along about what we're talking about, or else you might be a little lost, as this is a very visual-driven episode. So again, this is Computer Vision Decoded, and we're joined here by Jared Heinley. He's our co-host, and he is our in-house computer vision expert. Welcome, Jared. All right. And so again, also, if you've never been to a Computer Vision Decoded episode or listened to one of these, we basically take complex computer vision topics and we break them down for the average person. You do not need to have a background in computer science or computer vision. If you're just curious, that's where we're here to help you decode this complicated world and bring it down to a level that hopefully you understand and can utilize it in your daily life, in your business, and so on. So, Jared, let's jump into it. I'm going to get my slides up here. Just give me 1 minute here and talk about image capture for 3D reconstruction. So, Jared, a lot of what I'm about to share here, I actually learned from you and other computer vision experts. The reason why I really want to do this episode, as I'm getting this on the screen here, is that I'm often posting these amazing scans, and here's just a collection of a few on the screen here, and people will say, well, that's incredible. Mine don't look like that. What settings are you using? And that is the secret. It's less about the settings and more about how you're capturing the images. Is that right, Jared? Would you say?
That's right. That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Right.
It's more about the, how you captured that data than, how it was processed.
Yeah, exactly. You can only get so much out of a data set if you don't have good data. And so, as we also like to say, garbage in, garbage out. So if you go out there and you just do whatever you want with image capturing for a photogrammetry software, you're just not going to get those results. So just moving along, this is what we want. We want these really cool captures that are really complicated. We got great textures, or if you're doing a point cloud, you got all these details captured. And we'll see people go out there and say, I got like half of what you got. So this is what you want. But how do we get there? And so we're basically gonna take you through not everything when it comes to image capture for 3D reconstruction, but we're gonna hit basically the main topics that you're gonna want to focus on as you kind of go down this journey to become better at taking photos. And as you learn these basics, you'll realize there's more to it, but at least this will be the basis of taking good photos. So, Jared, can you tell the difference between these two results that I took with the same app?
Well, they look very different. One looks nice and complete. The other one, not so great.
Yeah, so I see this a lot too. So this just comes down to the fact that you can use any app. If you recognize that this app, that's great. It's a great app. It'll only work as good as the images and the way you walk around with that app to get the results. And neither of these are perfect, but there's definitely a huge difference. So let's dive into those. So we're going to talk first about camera motions for 3D capture. And I have a visual vocabulary, and in that downloadable guide, you will definitely see that guide there, and that'll help you to realize how you can walk around a scene. So Jared, why is it important that we stick to these visual or these motions and when you're capturing a scene in 3D?
Yeah. So what these motions do is, it enables you to have that good data for the 3D reconstruction. So because behind the scenes, 3D reconstruction, it isn't magic. It's not just like you throw images in and just hope for the best that, some nice, amazing 3D result's going to come out. There is some math, there's algorithms, there's logic that's going on into how that 3D reconstruction is performed. And so what we've done here is, these, good camera motions, these camera motions that we've highlighted here as being good, support that, and reinforce the kinds of things that logic and those algorithms and the math is looking for. Whereas those bad camera motions are doing things that violate some of the assumptions and constraints that 3D reconstruction needs in order to actually work.
All right, so that makes sense. So there's some constraints it has. The computer software needs specific criteria when it comes to capturing images. And if we don't abide by those laws of 3D reconstruction, it just won't work out. So I categorize this for everyone in a set of motions as good, bad, and transition. And in reality, I'm actually going to walk you through this not in quite this order. I'm going to go good, transition, then bad. But the reason why I did this is because a lot of times I'll tell someone, you pan the camera. Well, that can mean multiple things. I've seen a lot of jokes online of panning the camera could be just standing in place and panning left to right. Panning the camera could be moving across a scene, taking like a panoramic while you're moving. There's a lot of ways to interpret that. So if we're on the same set of vocabulary, then we can be talking about this all in the same way. And so that will be key here, is to make sure that as you learn that we all use the same vocabulary, and then we can help you out much easier. And so we'll stick with the good ones first, the good camera motions. And as you capture things, just know that if almost all your movements are good, or if they're all good in transition, but mostly good motions, you're going to get these really good results, these details that you're going to be shocked by. So this is trucking. This is about as simple as it gets. If you can't do this movement, then you probably shouldn't be trying this. This is just walking a straight line, like to say down a car, down a wall, and you're snapping photos. So Jared, what's happening there that makes this movement considered good? Like why is this a good motion?
Yeah, the reason that this is a good motion, and you'll see a common thread as we talk through these different motions, there's a lot of the same reasoning for why a motion is good or why a motion is bad. And it all comes down to triangulation. So triangulation, a key insight there is parallax. So the parallax being the concept where if, you move your head or you move a camera, side to side, near objects are going to move a lot more, relatively compared to objects in the distance. So if you have a mountain that's way far off, I can slide my camera back and forth a few feet or a few meters, and that mountain's going to look like it hasn't moved at all. But if there's a tree or a bush that's only, a few meters or feet away from me, that's really going to move back and forth, as I move that camera. And so it's this notion of parallax and things moving at different distances, that we need in order to do a 3D reconstruction. So I mentioned this word triangulation. So in order to be able to reconstruct a surface, I need to be able to see that surface from two distinct positions. And so seeing that surface from two distinct positions allows me to triangulate, so form a triangle between that surface and then my two camera positions. And so with that, with those two positions, I'll be able to perceive this, or the computer will be able to perceive parallax, that change in motion, change in position, and triangulate, recover the accurate position of that surface in 3D. So in this case, in this trucking motion where I'm moving the camera side to side, my object's pretty near to me, we're going to see that surface move a lot as the camera moves with it. And so that's going to give us a lot of really stable triangulation results, being able to take the pairs of cameras and figure out, where is that point, where is that surface in 3D space.
Okay, so I think of this for people who maybe come from a geospatial world as GPS triangulation as well. Like you can't triangulate.
Great analogy.
You cannot triangulate the position of my iPhone on the Earth with one satellite. You need multiples. In fact, would you say that just two is the bare minimum to get a triangulated position, but in fact, more is the better? I know there's a diminishing return, but at least having two, but more
Yeah,
often.
absolutely. I mean, I know with GPS you need more, but yeah, here in computer vision, bare minimum is two. But even that, then there's a little bit of ambiguity. And so having more, 3, 4, 5, having more, observations, of that surface from different positions, you get even more accurate results.
Yeah, that's a good term, observations, because each position might have a little bit of air in it. So the more you have, perhaps you'll have a more accurate position that is able to triangulate on a surface. Okay,
Absolutely.
so let's move along. So with that basis on getting parallax movement and overlapping images and seeing from points on different from different areas, from different locations, you'll quickly see that all these good motions have something in common. So the next one is an arc. Now that's basically moving around an object while keeping the camera fixed at it, while keeping the camera pointed at a fixed point. That point might be in the middle, somewhere you can't really see, but hey, I'm just basically walking an arc, a circle around an object. This could be like more of an oval, but you're keeping that camera pointed in. You're not twisting about as you're walking. You're making sure that you're keeping kind of the object as your center of focus here.
Yep.
And so again, you're getting that parallax, and why that center of focus is important is because now you're going to see something for longer in the video or the pictures you're taking in a row.
Yeah.
So.
And like in this example with the arc, you have both that parallax because you're moving along or moving around that surface, but this also sort of introduces the concept of smooth rotations. So as you arc around that object, I'm not quickly rotating my camera or jerking it. I'm making smooth angular adjustments to that camera's orientation as you move around the object. And so that's another key factor in a lot of these camera motions, is that as you're doing angular change, that angle change is both coupled with position change, but is also a smooth angular motion. And that's going to minimize, as you said, the appearance change between those consecutive images. I want that surface to appear as similar as possible between my consecutive images in order to facilitate tracking and matching between those images. Because that's one of the key concepts behind the scenes when computer vision's performing that 3D reconstruction, is it wants to be able to figure out, well, which parts of the image are the same, and that is most successful when that image content is highly similar.
Okay. That's very helpful. So you got this smooth motion. We have parallax, a lot of overlap between images. You don't want I always say you don't want to be waving this camera up and down as you're walking, because you're kind of losing features. Even though you're moving in an arc, you want to make sure that camera's kind of smoothly.
Yeah, you want to stay fixated.
Right.
Yeah. See things for a long amount of time. I don't want to just see it for a few, half a second and then move away. I want to sort of fixate on different parts of the scene and look at them from different angles or positions.
Okay. And so I guess with that as well, I just know that the iPhone LiDAR is quite magic. Let's talk about that kind of further down in this show, but it's trained people to just wave their camera around like magic spray paint can that you can just spray points and textures onto everything, and it just works. And so you need to make sure you break those habits if you form them. And again, it's that smooth motion, not just moving the camera up and down and seeing things only once. So it's all about seeing things multiple times, multiple positions. So, and then pedestal, this one is basically trucking, but you're going vertical. So we're just changing the directions from your x-axis to your z-axis, or y-axis if you're a gamer. But this is basically then used. When would I use this, Jared? When I want to pedestal the camera.
Yeah, this is used a lot of times if you have like a building facade or some sort of taller object. There I might start out along the lower part of that object, then I want to pedestal up to see the middle, and pedestal up even higher to see the top part of that object. So essentially, anytime there's a surface that's has a lot of vertical depth to it, then I want to move the camera up and down to see all those parts of that facade.
All right. And so when you pedestal as well, I always suggest that you use the right tool. So if you have a drone, that's basically just elevating the camera up by flying up higher. Or you can use a telescoping monopole, or use your hand, but depending on how large the object is, let's say this whole building, if I move that camera and I'm back, let's say, trying to get the whole side of a building, and that building is, I don't know, 30 feet tall or 10 meters tall. If I just move my hand up, I'm getting a higher view, but not really in relative relation. I'm not getting a lot of parallax movement on that building. So that's where a monopole might help get better views, or a drone. So, but if it's a small object, like a statue or small, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you're trying to do a teddy bear at home on a desk just to practice, just moving it up a few inches might be a lot of movement across that object. So it's kind of relative. And we'll get to overlap where that might make sense. But just know that, hey, you're pedestaling that camera. It's a good motion, but make sure it's not just, I'm moving it like a foot or two. If the building is huge, it's not really going to do what you're expecting.
Yep.
And then the last good motion is called a boom. And so again, that's basically you're doing your vertical arcing. I have the straight arrow, but that's more of an arcing motion vertically. So now I'm not only moving up, but I'm also then giving the camera a slight rotation down. Or you can do reverse boom. You can go down and then you're going from, angled down towards the ground from an oblique to more of a horizontal shot. But what you're doing there is you're not only elevating, but you're also changing the angle in which you're capturing that object. Again, it's that smooth motion, that parallax. If we're capturing, again, a small object, I'm gonna talk about how to connect these, but you're gonna do a lot of arcs and a lot of booms, or a lot of arcs and a lot of pedestals to get everything you need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that boom is nice too. Like with you said before about like the statue example. If you have a statue, sometimes you want a pedestal up and down to get. Oh, you want to get the head, the torso, the legs. If the arms are extended, sometimes you want to see underneath the arm, and that's where the boom can be nice, because you can sort of look. As you move the camera up, you tilt it down so that you can see the top of the arm, or then you sort of boom down, move the camera down while tilting up. Now you can see underneath the arm, and so there's examples like that where to capture different components of an object. You may use a pedestal or a boom. Depending on if you want to see, just sort of like the main facades, or above it, below it, and capture those individual details.
Right. And once you've learned these 4 basic motions, and then the transition ones, which you can use sparingly, you can go crazy. As long as you're sticking to these motions, you really can't mess up a scan too much. It's all about getting those parallax views, and you can use these in any combination. As Jared was saying, like you're pedestaling, you get to the top of a really tall object, now you want to boom to get the top of it. You might think this house, if you want to get the roof, at one point you're booming, and then you're looking straight down eventually. So, okay, so transition movements. So these are basically connectors. So those good motions are what we want. But there is times in which you just want to orient yourself different in the scene, and using those motions might not make the most sense. Or Jared, I'm sure, can elaborate on when you'll want to use transition camera movements. But just know that these don't really help or hurt. They just don't really add much to the overall 3D reconstruction. So you're not getting any parallax movement so much. And so that's why I see people use these movements all the time, and I'm about to talk about that, and it just drives me crazy because they'll do this for the whole capture and say, why did I barely get a good result? So, well, you didn't really do anything that helped. So, oops, went the wrong direction. So push in. So this one's self-described pretty much. You're going to push in on the objects. You're going to get closer in. And again, you're just moving parallel. So you're just basically like first-person view, as if you're putting the camera right in front of you and walking in the same path. That's not really helping. And why, Jared, does that not help? Like, things are getting bigger. Does that alone not help?
Yeah, so it doesn't help because of this concept of triangulation. So, I mean, the reason that this motion is acceptable is that you remain fixated on the object, a common point in space. So as I push in, and get closer to that object, you said that objects can get bigger within the image, so I'll still stay fixated on it. But when I come back to that notion of parallax and triangulation, that object right in the center of the image, it hasn't moved at all. I've kept it there in the center as I've moved in. And so I'm trying to see if I've formed a triangle. I've got my two camera positions, they were in a line, and then the thing that I'm moving toward is also straight ahead of me. And so all my sort of 3 points, my 3 corners of that triangle are all in a straight line. And so that's a line and not a triangle, which then means that I can't actually triangulate that surface in 3D space. And so that's where if my entire capture was just pushing in, always just walking a straight line with the camera pointed straight ahead, I'm never going to reconstruct something directly ahead of me because I was never able to triangulate it. I never had parallax. I never saw it from different vantage points that formed that triangle that gave me triangulation. Now, technically, you have very small triangulation along the edges of the frame. So if there was an object, like in this case, you're showing, getting closer to an airplane. And so the tips of those wings, I may be able to see those move throughout the image as I get closer, but I'm only seeing them for a short amount of time. And my change in camera position with respect to those points on the airplane didn't move that much. And so that triangulation angle is going to be rather small, which then means the accuracy of that surface reconstruction is going to be low. So yeah, it's not a very good motion. It doesn't add value, as you said. It doesn't add detail to the reconstruction, but it is an acceptable motion because you are remaining fixated on that object.
Okay, that makes sense. So lack triangulation, lack of parallax movement, you're just fixating on movements. You're missing kind of those core components to triangulate a feature on that airplane there in that example. So then I guess I use push in if I want to get closer in on some details.
Yeah.
Let's say I have an establishing shot of this plane. I just stand so far back that I'm getting the whole plane, the whole wingspan maybe in one shot, and then I'm going to walk a loop around this. And then I might want to push in because I want to get some detail because we don't go into all of the aspects of photogrammetry here and structure, the whole structure from motion and 3D capture, but there is a concept of you can only get so much data because on a shot at a distance because a pixel represents a certain amount of ground or a certain amount of the object. So if you're really far away, you're not going to get those details. Like, just taking a photo of someone from really far away. If you zoom in, you notice you lose a lot of the, there's no detail on that person. Same here. So you might want to get closer. Jared, if I do that though, like let's say I'm really far from this airplane. I don't know. Let's say I'm 20 feet away. And then I get down to 3 feet away. Is that going to be a problem? Is it going to be able to say, oh, okay, I still can match these features, even though there's a drastic difference? Is there like a limit to that? Where, let's say I looped this twice, but at again a huge distance and a very small distance, would it not be able to register those together?
Yeah, those large changes in scale. So if I went immediately from 20 feet away an object to 3 feet away, and that was my only photo, my photo was 20 feet, and then I have another photo that's 3 feet away. Those objects are going to be such a different size in the image that computer vision methods, are not going to work. What we're looking for here, like we said before, where we wanted that nice smooth rotation. Same here. I want nice smooth translation, nice smooth position change. So as you push in and get closer to that object, be taking photos, as you step forward or as you move closer to capture that detail. General rule of thumb, you can get some really great results if the scale change is 10 or 20%. Between images. That's going to guarantee that you get some really, really great connectivity. There are methods, you can go a little further, but that 10 to 20% scale change maintains some really, really great connectivity.
Yeah, my favorite technique is to, instead of just walking straight in, I'm going to walk towards it at an angle, you could say. So as I'm, let's say, trucking across this wingspan here, so I'm going across the wingspan, I'll just be walking in towards it. So each picture is getting progressively closer, yet I also have some of that parallax side movement.
That's perfect.
That way you're not just going from far to close,
yep,
all in one shot. So that's a good way. So we're going to move to pull out. So this will be really quick because just everything we just talked about before pushing in, this is just the opposite is pulling out. So maybe I'm really close to something and now I need to get it further away. I also think of this as perhaps the object gets taller on one side. Perhaps you're doing a house and you're just trying to get the whole house in one shot. Well, it might be one story for part of the house, then also the second story. So you might be pulling out to make sure the whole thing's still staying in your camera. Maybe you're just trying to get those establishing shots that are a little further out. There's lots of reasons. As you start to explore, you'll find this is useful to go in and out. But just know, as you're going and doing these two movements, you're not really mapping out anything. You're not really getting a good 3D reconstruction. And I see pushing in and pulling out most often when people are scanning or taking images of, let's say, like an alleyway, and they just think, oh, okay, I'll just walk straight down the alleyway. Well, the only things that are changing are the very edges of that camera, and you're just not getting anything. The only thing that will, I guess, change usually is like the ground right in front of them at the bottom. You might see some of that, but not much. So don't do that.
Yeah. I just want to touch there on one of the things you mentioned was those wide establishing shots, and so I find those to be really important or beneficial when doing a reconstruction of some object or a scene. I want to mix of both the wide establishing shots to sort of establish context. And that's sort of like the skeleton that's going to hold together the entire reconstruction. We'll touch on this later, this concept of loop closure and how that ends up being important. But it's these wide establishing shots which are going to provide that skeleton. And then if when I add detail then to that skeleton, add detail to that reconstruction, I may push in, capture detail of an object, and then pull back out to reconnect with that skeleton, and then I move on, find another part of the scene where I want to add detail. So I'll push in, capture that detail, pull out to reconnect.
Yeah. Okay, that is a good point. Those establishing shots can be very helpful. And I always like to think if you have an establishing shot wide out and you go in, you make a mistake. Well, at least you captured it further out. It's kind of like I won't say insurance, but hey. It's easier to walk further away from something and just walk around it. Not have to worry about all those little intricate move-in spots.
Yep.
All right. So these last two, these aren't actually in the guide that we published. So if, again, you're tuning in a little late to this, I said at the start, if you look at the notes or the description for this episode, I did put a guide with all this in there. And I omitted a couple of these because I wouldn't say to really think about this too much, but they are something that I thought I'd mention while I have you all on here. So just know that these are technically not even really moves. I guess the roll is a motion, but they are something to talk about really quickly. So you can roll that camera on axis. That's perhaps you're trying to angle your camera in somewhere. And so it doesn't always have to be perfectly horizontal or perfectly in portrait mode. Just know that as you roll that camera, you're like cleaving off features on the edges. So the middle is staying in that images. So as you're moving all around and you're rotating, you might be unintentionally losing features that are losing objects in the scene that you could have kept in the scene had you kept that camera, oriented more horizontally or in a portrait style.
Yeah. And as you say, this roll motion adds zero information to the reconstruction because that camera is staying still. You're sort of rotating in place from portrait to landscape or vice versa. So there's no sort of information gain. And so that's why I like, Jonathan, what you said too with your example of the push in, combining a push in with a truck. So if I'm in a situation where I want to rotate my camera from portrait to landscape just to get a better framing of the scene, I might combine that with a trucking motion or an arc. So I will rotate from portrait to landscape as I'm actually moving my feet and doing a trucking motion, in the scene.
Yeah, I may actually end up adding this into that document. So just know that if you download it today, there's a lot of information that we omitted that we could add, but we wanted to make sure it was kept to the basics. But yeah, that might be a good one to add, Jared. Just this in static, again, zero information added. I'm just standing there with the camera.
Yeah.
Jared, why would I do that?
But why? Yeah, so it may seem silly. Like, okay, why would I just hold the camera still and take pictures or record video or, while I'm holding the camera still? So this is most important or most applicable to video recording. So if I'm recording in a city or in some environment and there's things moving, cars, people, or whatnot, if something's going to pass in front of my camera's view, like a car is going to drive by, I'm going to want to stop, look at something, have that car drive by, and then once that car has passed and I'm able to see that object again, and then I'll start moving again. And so what this helps ensure is that I maintain connectivity within that video. Because if I'm moving while that car is passing in front of me, I'm not actually capturing the scene, and I'm just capturing this moving car, which isn't going to end up reconstructing well. And so I want to just pause, wait for the scene to become motionless again, and then start moving and resuming my capture pattern.
Okay, so that's something we haven't talked about, video versus images, but definitely if you're taking videos, that might make or break your scan. Just stand still, let things pass through. I always like to say too, if you're unsure what to do for a minute, you're like, oh, well, should I go that way or this way? It's fine just to stand there, keep the camera pointed at something. It's not going to ruin anything.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the bad ones, the bad motions. These are what you want to avoid. Yeah, panning. So that's actually the definition of panning. Is you're swiveling the camera horizontally from a fixed position. If you have an iPhone, and I'm sure other phones, I've never had a non-iPhone smartphone, but there is a panoramic mode where you can stand and do this pan to get these super, super wide sweeping shots. I think you can get a whole 360 if you go just right. And that's great for taking cool photos, but why? I'm pretty sure by now you've probably figured out, but why is that not a good idea when I'm taking images to stand in place and just pan that camera?
Yeah, well, it's not good because of triangulation again. So that triangulation, I need images from different positions in order to actually have that triangle, where I can figure out where that surface is based on two different observations from two different positions. And so if I'm just panning the camera, if I'm standing still and just rotating that camera in place, I'm not actually capturing images from different positions. I may be capturing images from different angles and seeing different parts of the scene, but there is no position change, and so triangulation just completely fails, and so you're not able to reconstruct any part of that scene.
Yeah, I see this way too much.
It's so easy. I mean, it's so easy to think that, if I just walk into a room, this to me happens a lot of times, interiors. If I'm trying to scan something inside, it's so easy sometimes just to want to walk into the room, look all around in different directions, and then walk out while realizing that I just kept my feet, still in place as I just waved that camera around. But there has to be some camera motion. That camera has to translate. That position has to change in order to triangulate those surfaces.
Yeah, I always say capture with your feet.
Just
keep
your feet moving.
Things will work out if you are always moving, as long as you're not. I see this too, or they're like, oh, I was moving, but they took like a really sharp turn, like an outward rotation with that camera. Mm-hmm. So here, let me show you. If you're looking at my video here, where I'm just kind of like I'm doing that panning motion, but I'm also kind of like just walking like a U-turn. That's not gonna work. Even though you're moving, you're not really. Your relative position's pretty darn fixed in one location.
Yeah. It comes back to that arc. An arc doesn't mean that you're rotating really quickly in place. There's some movement there. There's some positional change. There's smooth rotational change coupled with position change.
Yeah, and I see this mostly when people walk into corners. They don't know what to do. I come to a corner. I'm facing north, and I need to face east or west or whatever direction you're moving, because I'm in a corner. They just then pan across that corner, and now everything's ruined. That'll completely ruin, if you're just using photogrammetry, that'll just ruin everything. Same with so tilt. If you haven't figured it out by now, tilt and pan, it's just vertical and horizontal. You stick to doing everything but those two motions, and it's gonna work out for you. Again, I know I've done this myself, and you can get away with some tilting, but not really. Just don't do it, especially if you're just trying to tilt up to get the top of something and then tilt back down and then keep walking. I'll see people do that. Hey, I'm going, there's this, I want to get this window. And so they'll be walking across the building and then tilt up, get the window, tilt back down, keep walking. It would have been better had they tilted up a little bit and just kept walking as they're tilting, but not going to help. Anything you want to add there? I don't know if there's much to add there.
Not much. I mean, it's still the exact same thing. Same thing as that pan. Your camera's not actually changing position. You're just rotating.
Yeah. Okay. So this last one, zooming. Again, it's like capture with your, move with your feet. Don't zoom your camera. That's specifically most important if you are using a video, because we don't necessarily know that the camera properties have changed. So if you have a zoom camera, the software might not know that the camera has changed, so it gets really confused. And also, even if you're taking images, it's just something that if you just use either a fixed camera, a prime lens, or a fixed camera, or it doesn't have a zoom lens, you don't have to worry about this. But we have seen people do that. They'll like zoom in as they're moving. Don't know why. It can also happen on cameras that have like a physical zoom ring, right? Or on like a DSLR or mirrorless, where they accidentally bump that ring, and now all of a sudden their zoom is moved, and that's not going to help. So what do you have anything you want to add on that, Jared? Like why zooming can confuse the software?
Yeah. So zooming, what it's doing is it's changing the properties of that lens. It's changing the field of view. So, in one image, I might have had a 60-degree horizontal field of view, and then the next image, it's 30 degrees because I've zoomed in and I'm seeing, a smaller portion of the scene. And it's not just a smaller portion of the scene. It's the way that, the geometry of that lens, as the light comes in that lens, it's what angle of light is captured by that lens and then ends up on that sensor. So what a lot of computer vision packages do, computer vision software packages, or photogrammetry or 3D reconstruction packages, is they're going to estimate the intrinsics, estimate a 3D model of that camera. And it does that in order to generate more accurate results. So if I take a bunch of images with a 50 millimeter lens, on my DSLR, while that image may have some EXIF that says it's 50 millimeters, the photogrammetry, the reconstruction software is going to refine it. Maybe it really was 49 or 49.5, and so it can do some refinement. Well, that refinement is most accurate when I have a bunch of examples. So if I have a bunch of images all taken at 50 millimeters, that all had that same focal length, that same zoom level, then I'm able to get a really accurate estimate of, well, what was the real physical geometry of that lens. Similarly with distortion, if there's any distortion at the edge of the image, like where the image looks like it's warped or curved, software packages can also estimate that too, and that can be a function of how much zoom was there in the lens. And so you get best results when you have a bunch of examples of imagery all from those same, with those same camera parameters. And as you mentioned with video, sometimes video can be more challenging because there isn't consistent EXIF. There isn't consistent metadata in there to let the software know that, oh, I'm changing zoom levels halfway through the video. And so this subset of frames is at one focal length and this other subset's at a different focal length. So that's where it's best. I get best results when, all of the images, or that entire video is at a single zoom level, because then the software package is able to use all of those frames, all of those images to get a nice refined estimate for the camera properties.
Okay. So that it's all about avoiding the camera intrinsics, the focal length, the distance of the sensor to the glass, and all those things from changing as you're going. And specifically also the software not knowing those have changed, for one. But also, even if they do change, it's just not helpful. We do have a great comment. Jim added, if you're capturing items at scale using various tools, non-phone-based rigging, prime lenses are best. Yes, I always say a prime lens. If you just stick with a prime lens and just one prime lens and move in and out with your feet or just get different angles, that's great. I would add to his comment that if you're looking at buying a drone, you'll see like these zoom drones, like the Mavic Air, the Mavic 2 Zoom and the Mavic 2 Pro. I think they're on the 3 now, but just know, I even think the 3 Pro has a zoom and a non-zoom lens. You want to use the one that can't zoom, because even if you don't change the zoom level of a lens, especially the vibration on a drone, it might be slipping in and out of different focal lengths just slightly. Like, you wouldn't know the difference looking visually at a photo, but I can tell you the software knows the difference. It'll say, something's weird. Your focal length just keeps moving a little bit. And we've seen that as a problem. So just know that that's a problem. All right. So zoom. So now let's put some of these together. I think we can pick up the cadence. Now we kind of have that, but so I have like this do this, not this image here of a telephone box in that you'd find in the UK. And again, I see people do this. They're like, okay, I want to get all the details, and they'll just walk circles around this. I always say walk multiple circles. We'll talk about it in just a minute. But the fact that they didn't move the camera pedestaling it up and down, it's not going to help. And you can see in this illustration, you might not be that close to the actual object, but that you want to actually take multiple arcs, multiple circles around that, and actually be moving that camera up, keeping some sort of perpendicular angle to that to the objects. Would you add anything to that? Like that. What's going on with the arc plus tilt there that you wouldn't like?
I mean, the arc and tilt will work, but it's a lot better to have the arc plus pedestal, because in the arc plus pedestal, you're adding additional camera positions. If I just do 3 arcs all at the same sort of elevation, my set of camera positions is just one ring of positions around that object. But by having the pedestal, I'm getting additional positions from which I can triangulate that surface. I can start even triangulating the surface from those multiple elevations in addition to multiple positions around that arc. And as well as you said too, it's also beneficial because the camera maintains it's looking at that surface in a perpendicular direction, and you can get some better reconstructions when the camera is oriented or positioned so that it's viewing a surface in a perpendicular way.
Yeah. So I guess when we get to the loop closure, you can explain a little bit too more about how that might help. But also, I also find that you get more occlusion when you're looking at things at all these different from three angles, but from the same position, you're going to have occlusions. Things are going to kind of get missed because overhanging objects will kind of block it. But if you move up and around, you might see around that object better and fill in more detail. So there's I don't want to say the arc plus tilt on this specific one wouldn't work. You won't get as great a result.
Yeah. It's not quite as good.
And so I'm going to throw this in here really quick again. Jim added one more comment about using digital zooming and sensor cropping, and he's absolutely correct as well. You don't want to crop on a sensor. Again, it's just that detail loss, and if you don't have the detail, it's like garbage in, garbage out. So if you got a really low detail in that image, then you're not going to get the full benefit of using that camera that you have in your hand by digitally zooming. And I know Apple does that. So like they'll have like a 1 and the newest Pro has like 1, 2, and 3. And I know they do different things to give you different outputs, but I know some of them will have they have presets. Between those presets, you're actually digitally zooming in and out because there's the ultra wide, normal, and telephoto. And those 3 are actually at those like preset zooms or preset sensor sizes. And then if you zoom between those 2, you're starting to do that sensor cropping. All right. Okay, so here's a couple more. We're just going to go through this quick. I like arc plus boom. This is how you would capture like a small object on a table or even a larger object, even a house, for all I know, if you have a drone. But it's actually got a little bit of arc plus, it's got a little bit of pedestaling as well with the arcs. But just know that, like, I capture a shoe or something cool like that, I'm just going to do a lot of circles at getting progressively higher and at a more of a downward angle until I get to the top where I'm practically taking pictures in a circle at the top. It's pretty simple. That's a good one to practice with. Truck plus arc. You could do this around the whole building. You just basically walk. You just follow. I like to think of following the contours, the major primitives of that building. Like you got a flat area here. It's like a box. But when you come to a corner, you want to round those corners. You want to keep that corner in view the whole time. And I always think of like, okay, I'm going to pick something in the specific corner and just make sure that stays in the middle of my camera the whole time. And that way I don't accidentally pan left or right or get some bad movement introduced. So just pick something, move around that specific general spot, and then move in a straight line again when you can. And then truck plus pedestal. This one looks like a sideways version. If you've ever tried one of those drones that can automate flying, mapping out, that's basically this turned on its side where I'm going to go back and forth, up and down. This is a good one for getting, let's say, that building with all that house with all those windows and everything. You might want to do that to work your way up a wall. You can use a monopole or a selfie stick or a drone. But again, it's you're changing your position as you're going, and you're getting a lot of parallax between each kind of corn row there as you're going. So those are kind of like 3 main ones. Again, if you're a drone, just take like that same truck plus pedestal, turn it looking straight down, and that's how you can map out the ground. You're just basically doing these rows. And I always suggest using software. The software made for that. You don't have to do any of the legwork, and it will pre-calculate all this for you. Anything you want to add to this set here, Jared?
No, I mean, I think you covered great examples of these. I mean, it's just, yeah, in all of these examples, the key insights is that there's always camera movement, that camera's position is changing, and then those angular motions, are smooth and happening at the same time as position change.
Yes. Smooth motions, parallax, it all works out. So then the last one is another do this, not that. The corner. People do a room, people do a, I don't know, that just, I see this is one I see more often than anything else. They'll walk themselves into a corner. That is not good. Never put yourself in a corner. You want to make sure that you do, I think of it like almost like a 3-point turn with a car, where you're going to scan a corner by walking in a perpendicular path to a wall up until your right shoulder on this example is against the wall. You can't go any further, but at that point, you should have that corner in view of your camera. And then you're going to arc around that camera, or arc around that corner, keeping that corner in the view the whole time. Now you're getting that great smooth parallax movement and getting all that translation. And then you're going to then truck your way out the other way. So now notice I've moved direction 90 degrees, but not by panning. So I see that panning all the time, and people have tried many of these photogrammetry apps on iPhones, things like that are using just pure photo mode, and they're like, oh, the rooms don't work. Well, they're doing this. This is probably the major reason that they're not getting the results they expect. So I'm going to take this as an opportunity, Jared, to explain why when I'm using, let's say, any one of those many LiDAR apps with iPhone, that I'm able to get away with this exact motion, because I do this and it's magic and it just works. Or the new room plan, even all those, I can just kind of move the camera and wave it around like a magic wand, and it all works. What have they managed to do that makes this still work?
Yeah, no, great question. So it comes down to the technique, or the method in which that surface is reconstructed. So in the photogrammetry sense, when I'm using images to reconstruct the surface, in order to figure out the depth of that surface in the scene, I need to be able to triangulate it. I need images at different positions to be able to have that angle or that parallax to triangulate that surface in the scene. Mm-hmm. Whereas you mentioned these LiDAR apps, so on the latest iPhones, iPads that have LiDAR, the LiDAR is an active sensor. It's measuring the distance to points in the scene using infrared light, and so that gives you the depth of the scene almost for free. Like, I don't have to move my camera. There doesn't have to be parallax in order for that sensor to be able to see what the depth is. And so that's why you can stand in the middle of the room, rotate in place, not even move the position of that camera, and the LiDAR sensors can be able to give the depths of all of the things in the scene. Shortcomings, though, is that LiDAR sensor only has a limited range. It's only good out to 5 meters. And so if you're trying to reconstruct something that's farther than that, or you want to get higher detail or higher accuracy results, that's where the images with their greater resolution, you can see beyond that 5 meters. That's where then photogrammetry comes into play, and you actually need to have that positional movement in order to recover the depth of those surfaces in the scene.
Okay. So they got way more going on to make that work. And again, if you just have photos, you don't have all that information to recover there. So that's unique. And I think that is the reason why most people who are going from an iPhone scanning app with LiDAR to trying out photogrammetry to get a higher quality scan are failing, because they just were trained that, I can just do that. And then put Apple's all the sensors, all that information, all those techniques to recover your bad motions when it comes to capturing this. And there's more error in those scans by far too, that you'll find. They do a really good job keeping the error on that tracking to a minimum, but you will see it accumulate, especially over larger distances. All right. Okay, so now we're gonna get to kind of more I guess everything's been technical, but this to me is a little bit more technical, that I'm really happy that we have Jared on this call, or on this episode, because a loop closure can be a very complicated thing to explain, but I hope he can explain it in a way that makes sense to everyone and why it's really important. I have this diagram here it's not the best diagram, but it's just trying to show you what is going to happen when you get a loop closure. So Jared, when I'm capturing this van here, it's got tons of loop closures. I'm doing tons of, I think I walked around this van 10 times and I got all these loop closures and I got this great result. And so, Jared, what is a loop closure and why do I want to do it? Why did I want to walk around this van multiple times besides just getting different angles? Why is that helping?
Yeah. So loop closure, I mean, what it is you're closing the loop. You're walking somewhere and you come back to, some place that you've been to before. Now, so why would you want to do that? Well, in 3D reconstruction, as well as many other sensing technologies, there's a concept of drift. As I'm trying to estimate my position and orientation over time, I'm going to do that based on things that I've seen previously. And so going from, position 1 to position 2 and then to position 3, every time I move to a new position and I'm looking back at my previous ones, I may have made small errors, and it might be really, really tiny, tenths of a percent, thousandths of a percent error going from one measurement to the next. But if I do this enough times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000, 100,000 times, those really, really tiny errors are going to accumulate. And I may end up being off by, several percent, which in this scan could mean that after walking 100 meters, I may be off by several meters in my estimated position. So where loop closure comes into play is if I'm able to come back to a place that I've been to before, those images, and come back to a place that I've been to before and look at a similar part of the scene, that 3D reconstruction software is going to be able to recognize that and say, oh, okay, these two very separate points of that walking path, of that trajectory, should be same or should be very similar, and it can, bend and warp that reconstruction, basically, canceling out all of that accumulated error and getting it back to zero. And so in this example with a car, you're doing this many times, not just one loop around the car. You have many loops at different elevations. And so each of those loops at different elevations are just adding, a lot of redundancy, a lot of strength in the connections between those images. And so there's going to be, very, very, very little accumulated drift. The sort of physical example that I like to think about when I'm thinking about loop closure or these connections between images, is a bridge. Sure, I can build a bridge with just a single beam, across the two sides of a river, but if a heavy truck's in the middle of that beam can flex and bend really easily. That's why a lot of bridges are going to have, it's like a truss bridge. There's going to be extra struts and other, beams and bracings that add rigid, that make that structure more rigid. I'll have two beams that are offset, in vertical and horizontal directions, and then there's struts that connect them, and so that gives you this very rigid structure that's hard to bend. Same thing here in photogrammetry. If I'm doing multiple loops at different elevations or different distances to that object, so I have, a multitude of different camera positions, that then is further strengthening the triangulations that I'm able to do of that surface, as well as helping to cancel out accumulated error as I was moving through that camera trajectory.
Okay, so that makes sense. So each image has got a little error, just to sum this up. As you're moving along, that error accumulates, and that's how you end up with saying, the green's the true path. This is like actually what I did. Red path's what we triangulated. Let's say you're walking around a whole soccer pitch or something really large. That error might be quite sizable because compounding effect of little errors over time. But as we see things over again, it's able to say, oh, okay, I see that now from this position. I'm able to refine the other positions and say, okay, that was off a little bit. Now, to make this all make sense, we got to fix all those positions, and eventually it just creates this rigid correlation between all the images and snaps them to where they are, or as close as we can get. I know there still can be some error. I wouldn't say that loop closure is going to make everything 100% accurate, but it definitely goes a long ways.
Yeah.
I don't have slides here on like how to get loop closure. Obviously, if I'm walking around an object, if you come back to where you started, and I say go a little past that, even get a little bit more extra than just like one image that's where you started, that'll help, because at least it's about coming back to that point too from a different position. You're not coming back necessarily right from you're not coming from the starting from the same direction that you just walked from. You're coming from a different direction. So it's going to say, oh, okay, I should be right here on this place on the soccer pitch, but I'm actually 5 feet over. Okay, we're going to snap that together and make it all make sense going backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the more of you do this, it's like, I guess I also like to think of like a puzzle. If you do the edges of a puzzle, you know, you're not quite sure how big this puzzle is going to be. And then you get all the puzzle pieces together and it kind of snaps into this edge of a puzzle. And I know this might be a bad analogy, but you got this puzzle, but even still, like it's kind of squishy. It's not until you start to fill in all those other puzzle pieces within a puzzle, then it starts to build some rigidity and your puzzle doesn't want to like shift around and you can get a true shape of this thing. And when you get all those puzzle pieces in there, you got a lot of interconnection between all these puzzle pieces. That puzzle is like locked in stone. You're not going to be able to like stretch and morph the border of it. And that's kind of like, again, maybe not the best analogy, but it's kind of like we're building that rigidity in positions and making sure, okay, I saw that car window from 12 different positions at 12 different loops. Okay, I got a pretty good idea where it's supposed to really be. All the air starts to be worked itself out.
Yeah, and that's actually, I mean, I like that example. You talked about, so loop closure, it's more than just big loops. Like you said with that puzzle, it's like, sure, I can do a full loop around that object. I can get that edge, that border of my puzzle, but that puzzle can still, shift and wiggle a little bit. It's not until I have all those like tiny loops, all of that interconnecting structure in the middle, that then you end up with this nice rigid structure. And it's the same thing here too. Like it's not just one loop around the vehicle. You did multiple loops at different elevations, different distances to the object, and so that's adding just a ton of redundancy, a ton of you have multiple observations of each point on that surface, which then gives you really, really nice connectivity and accuracy of that surface.
Okay, so loop closure is good. One loop is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Sub loops are great.
Yep.
I'd say multiple loops around objects at different elevations or different distances away. Again, we don't want to go from like 5 feet or 1 meter away from something and then go 20 feet or 10 meters back. We want to be changes so the scene looks a little different, but getting more of those the better. There's overkill. This van may have been overkill. The only reason why you see so many loops here is because I was trying to get the whole van. There wasn't a lot of space to walk around it, and so I had to do like a loop and then move the camera up just a little bit. So we're about to talk about a camera overlap, and that kind of also explains why I ended up doing so many loops here. It's just I could only capture so much. You don't want to move so much that the taller loops don't connect to the lower loops. You want to make sure you're incrementally moving along. So let's see here. Let's just jump to the next. So image overlap. So again, we went through camera motions. We talked about loop closures, coming back, seeing things that you've seen before to give you a stronger connections of your images and geometry and making sure that everything doesn't have a weird warped shape. And the last major thing you need to focus on is your overlap between images. And so I have this graphic I'm trying to show is like, here's a house, and I'm going to take photos as I'm walking in a trucking motion. So I'm moving across, and I only stepped these camera pictures up a little bit. Just you can see the separation from photo 1, 2, and 3. But in reality, yeah, they really might be all the same elevation. What matters here is that we were getting at least a third new scene, but more importantly, keeping 2/3 of a feature in the next image. So you can see in this middle portion here, this smaller garage door bay is actually contained in all 3 photos. And that's because we're only moving in thirds. So of course we're going to see that in 3 different photos. And that's, Jared, would you say that's like, we should be aiming for just that? Should we go more or less?
Yeah, that to me is sort of the bare minimum of what you need. Like ideally I would like, at minimum, I need to see that point in 3 images, ideally 4 or more. Now you may ask, well, why was that? You just said, several minutes ago that I can do triangulation with 2 images and it does work. Well, here, the issue is in the way in which, well, if I have 2 images, how do I add that third? How do I add that fourth? And so on. The way that I can grow a reconstruction is that that third image needs to see similar content as those first 2, and then that fourth image needs to see similar content as at least 2 previous ones. And it comes down to the way in which a lot of 3D computer vision packages or photogrammetry packages actually do the reconstruction. They're going to start out with 2 images. They're going to triangulate the surface in the scene, And then that third image is going to get added by figuring out, well, how does it match to that already triangulated surface? And so in the process of doing that, in order to do that, there actually has to be overlap with that existing triangulated surface. And so that third image needs to have overlap with at least 2 previous ones in order to do that successful triangulation and an extension of the reconstruction. So for me, I'd say, yeah, bare minimum is that 2/3 overlap, 67%. But I usually like to shoot for 70 or 75% overlap, as more of a safer minimum when I'm doing the snapping the photos to do that reconstruction.
Yeah. So if you dive into the documentation of a lot of the photogrammetry software packages out there, they will call this out 70+% overlap. But know that if you do get 67-ish%, things will work out. But yeah, more the better. And there's times where you want to shoot 80% overlap or 90% overlap. But as you're learning, yeah, just aim to. And if I was walking across this house and you're taking photos, and we'll talk about video versus photos here in a few minutes, but I just like to think of I'm just constantly hitting picture, take a step. And that way you might be hitting overkill. It might take you a little longer, but boy, if maybe it takes you 5 minutes longer to do this or 10 minutes longer, it's a whole lot quicker than going and doing the whole thing over again because you didn't get enough images in the first place. So, you can always overshoot. You can't undershoot. So it's always it's always good to introduce the grid into the viewfinder. So here we go. Mark added, use the grid in your viewfinder as your marker. That does help for sure.
Yep, that's a good recommendation.
You do enough of these, like I've done it for about 10 years. I've been capturing images for 3D reconstruction. It just becomes like second nature. But if you're not doing it and you're just learning, yeah, that's a great recommendation. Use that viewfinder. And if you don't know how to do that, you can just look up the settings on your camera, on your smartphone, or in your DSLR. If you have DSLR, I'm guessing you know how to do that. Okay, so then that's moving in a straight trajectory. That's trucking or pedestaling. Knowing that also in pedestaling, you won't necessarily move as far because you're depending on how you're holding that camera. You see they're horizontal. You see they're got a wider width or a taller. Either hold a portrait or landscape. So if you're moving a landscape, you can move a little bit further to keep that high overlap. But if you're moving in the opposite direction, you might not have very much movement because as you're moving the opposite way, let's say vertically, and you're holding the camera in the orientation of this photo, it's just not as much being captured top to bottom. But in this is a little different. So this is me. I'm walking a circle around this roller here, and what I'm illustrating here again is I want to get high overlap, but it feels different when you're rotating, because things don't just change in the screen, doesn't just parallax over. But what I'm trying to show here is, notice this handle in each image it's moving right to left as I'm kind of circling around this thing, but it's persistent. It's staying between multiple images. And this really isn't to scale. You'd probably see this. There's probably much closer spaced images if you're close in. But what is your recommendation, Jared, for when I'm moving I'm doing an arc around something? That's a little different.
Yeah, so when you're arcing around something, you may think, well, hey, I still, as I'm rotating around that, I'm still pointed at that object, so my overlap should be high. I'm still seeing at least 75%, of that object as I rotate. I should be able to walk pretty far and snap a new photo. Well, the other thing that at play here is, the angle at which you're viewing that surface. We kind of touched on it a little bit before with the arc, which is what we're doing here, arcing around the object. So again, one of the things that is needed for a good 3D reconstruction is to have the appearance of that object stay similar between consecutive images. And part of that appearance is its sort of orientation or tilt or rotation within the scene. So as I rotate around the object, that surface that used to be perpendicular to me is now going to start to be slanted and more oblique, and then eventually it's going to be its appearance is completely change. And so what I look for here with the rotation is I want to sort of have a consistent, somewhat small rotation change between consecutive photos so that the appearance of that surface is not dramatically changing between those photos. So my sort of rule of thumb is I want there to be, a 3 or 4 degree rotation change between images. So if I'm going to walk around an object, I may take 100 photos of that object, to form that full 360 degree rotation. And what that's ensuring is that consecutive images, or not even consecutive images, but sets of images, 5 images in a row are all going to have very similar appearances of that surface, which then is going to allow me to, find those corresponding points in the surface and get accurate triangulations, because I was able to see that surface from different angles, and the software was able to detect that that is the same surface. So Key takeaways here. Yes, you're rotating around the object, you're arcing around the object, taking photos, but have that rotation change between consecutive photos be in that sort of 3 to 4 degree range, so that you end up with high visual appearance or visual similarity in the appearance of that scene.
Mm-hmm. I definitely see that this is very important too, with kind of like thinner, flatter structures or things that look quite different as you move in a small amount of distance. So flattish facades, like the side of this roller, it might not change as much as you're rotating, but there's certain parts that will drastically change because they have a high angularity, or just I can look at the front of a roller and the side of a roller, and in my brain know that that is still the roller. Humans have neural networks built in our heads, all that. We know things. We recognize objects. Computers can't. They really need help to connect one to the next, or else you get 10 degrees of rotation different on one of these objects. You might say, well, that's a completely different object. I've never seen that one. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it's the same thing. It just doesn't know. It does not know how to put that there. So.
Yeah, and your comment there about like the difference between like a brick facade or just a building facade which is flat, like yes, that will look very similar as I look at it from different angles. But as you start to get to objects that are more geometrically complex, it's not just a facade. It's it's curved and bent, and like in here you've got a door handle, you've got vents, you've got other insets, and there's a lot of variety in that geometry. And so you need a greater number of photos, from smaller positional changes or smaller angular changes in order to maintain that sort of visual appearance or the visual consistency in the appearance to be able to reconstruct it. Yeah.
So you can't overshoot, as I like to say. I mean, there's no reason to take a photo every like third of a degree or something, but you I always aim higher than you probably think you need. And this is another good example. If I was to do this to like a lot of high detail, there's going to be all these occluded areas. If I just did a loop around this loader, like this between where this axle is, and this is a perfect opportunity where you could push in. You're out here taking these wide establishing shots, and you could like push in, and you want to get like say around these little cracks, all these little details. Now you can just do a bunch of little arcs, and then come back out, do a little wide arc, a shallow arc. And just make sure that as you're arcing, you're taking a lot of photos, because you're going to be really close to these kind of round objects. You want to make sure as you're going, you're taking snap, snap, snap. Or if you're taking a video, we'll talk about that, how that can help as well. But as you get close in, further out, you can go a lot further before you have to take that photo to get 100. But if you're close in, you're not moving much before you're taking that next photo. So know that the closer you are, that might feel like you're taking overkill in shots, but you're not. So a little plug here. We like video at Computer Vision Decoded. We're actually, this is brought to you by EveryPoint. In EveryPoint, we've built this engine that takes video and extracts intelligently all those images. So you don't have to think about it, because you're taking a video, what are you taking, 30, 60 frames per second. So you're getting a lot of different images. And so here's just a couple apps. If you guys are exploring that you can just jump in and use, so Scanamaze, Recon 3D, and Point Precise. Any one of these, they all use that image extraction. So as you're just trying to learn, I mean, these are great choices and great choices beyond that. But using video, there is some issues with using video, but just know that it's a good way to learn the motions and become a professional at this by using one of these apps. And so, Jared, when you use, what do we do with video that we're able to do that? Is that just are we just taking a frame every 2 seconds and hope it works, or is there something a little bit more intelligent going on there?
Yeah, no, there's more than going on there than just trying to extract a frame every second, which you can do.
Yeah.
So like, if you're just getting started and you're trying to do this on your own, a lot of times if you have a video, you can try extract a frame every, half second or a third of a second or once a second, and try to do this on your own. But, as you'll find, depending on the distance that you were to that object or how fast you were moving, you're going to have varying degrees of overlap in that reconstruction or in that set of images or, set of extracted frames. And so what we've done is, automatic, scene analysis, so tracking the parts of the scene, seeing, what all is shown in that video frame, and automatically enforcing these constraints we just talked about, saying, well, hey, I want to maintain at least 2/3 overlap in different parts of the image so that I can reconstruct everything that was seen in that video footage. And so we've developed algorithms that do that for us, automatically. And it's sort of a nice sweet spot where, it maintains the connectivity, maintains that overlap, but isn't overkill. You could just say, well, I'll just take every frame, but then you end up with just so much data that your processing goes on forever, and it's almost information overload. And so we've settled it on that sweet spot where we have really great connectivity, really great overlap, without going overboard.
Yeah. Now there is some downsides to video that we can just touch on. If you're just learning, those downsides don't really matter because you're just trying to learn. But if you're taking individual photos, and you can see on, I believe, all 3 of these apps, in fact, there's like a web component where you can upload individual images. But the downside, the downside to a video is if you're moving really fast, you're going to get some motion blur because that sensor can only read out so fast. And ideally you got the sharpest photos possible. But if you're learning, it doesn't really matter. If you're just doing this for fun, you're putting things on Sketchfab to like, hey, show your friends what you scanned. It probably doesn't matter. But just know if you're taking video, go slow. I say just walk like a slow walking pace as you're moving along these motions. You can always pause if you need a really clear shot. But there's some downsides there, of course, compared to images. Because when you extract a single image, let's say even out of a HD video, 1080p, that's only 2 megapixels, and you can get a higher megapixel. But again, that just means maybe you need to be closer to an object. So I would say this is a great way to start. And this might be where you need to end too for what you're doing. With video, you got the advantage of being able to move fast. So I want to scan an environment. I don't have 2 hours. I only have 10 minutes. You're gonna get it in a video in record time compared to photos. So it just matters what you're doing. I mean, if you're doing historical preservation, you probably know what you're doing already. You're probably not even watching this by now. But know that, like, if you really want to dive heavy into getting the most realistic textures and geometry and everything, you're going to take images, stills for the most part. But this is a great way to learn as well. So I'm just going to show you guys. I think I still have a couple more slides. So all these are from video.
Yeah.
And I post these all the time. And people are like, oh man, what camera do you use? I'm like, my iPhone. And they're like, oh wow, there's so much detail. Well, this cat loader here, this one on the bottom left, if you're hopefully you're tuned in to watch this on YouTube or on the live stream, but there's tons of texture details. And this one I use Scanamaze, and all those details just because I got really close. And I just got really inside of all this. I did a bunch of little arcs around everything, make sure I kind of got everything I could. And, even at, I think this was HD, 2 megapixels, but 2 megapixels from a foot away is pretty good texture detail. So just know that it might take longer to get all the tracks and all those little details, but, it just depends what you're going for. And again, like these are at point precise on the right side where I got the point clouds where these are interiors. Again, I just abide by those motions, and you're not very far from anything inside typically, so you can get great images. So I guess, Jared, the last thing I just want to touch on, I didn't have dedicated slides, but there's lighting and there's camera gear, and I get a lot of those questions too. Well, what camera gear should I use? More than lighting, but just I want to touch on lighting. Know that we have an episode, I think it's 2 episodes ago, Computer Vision in the Wild. Great episode. Jared breaks down all kinds of things to consider when outside and doing things where there's people walking around. And I think those are perfect complements to this. But we do talk about you want lighting to be ideal if it matters for your project. If not, you're gonna have shadows. So this middle, there's like 4 machines I did. There's like a shadow across the bucket. There's shadows in the, coming across these machines. You can see shadows everywhere. That might not be ideal versus this one with the Vespa. That was, I think, overcast. And so there's a shadow right underneath the Vespa, but a lot less shadows. So just depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just practicing, it doesn't matter. And those shadows can make for a really cool looking model. But again, if you're trying to make like a game ready object, you're going to have to make sure that those are all gone and learn how to shoot without all those, the lighting. Oh, this one to the van, it's got this really bright white section, and that's just light beaming on through. So lighting does matter because it'll bake in the light and darks into the textures of your points or your meshes. But it's just something to be cognizant of. And go watch that Computer Vision Decoded episode 3 where we talk about that. But gear, and then again, these were all taken with iPhones. I've used all kinds of cameras. Jared, is there recommendations for someone getting started of, like what camera they should use?
I said, use the camera that you have. That's what I do. I just keep my phone in my pocket. If I'm out somewhere and see something interesting, I'll pull that out. I love, for me, my go-to apps, Point Precise with the, video collection mode. I love video just because for how simple it makes it, how simple it is to capture that scene. I don't have to worry about and do the mental math of, okay, did I have the right overlap? Did I do the right things? It's just capturing those frames for me. And yeah, it's the phone you have in your pocket.
Yeah. And, if you have a drone, I've had that too. Someone say, I want to get a new drone for making 3D models. And I'm like, new drones, do you have one, or are you just looking to buy a new one for the first time? And if they're like, oh, well, I have a DJI Air 2 or something, Air 2S, whatever. Like, I don't have the Phantom 4 Pro V2 with the awesome shutter. I'm like, well, that's great. Go fly with that drone. That's perfect. Again, it's a camera you have. Learn to get a lot out of it. I know some spectacular filmmakers who are making amazing film using like a 6-year-old camera because they just know how to use it really well. At this point, I say the cameras are getting so good that I wouldn't go out and buy the new iPhone 14 Pro with the 48 megapixel, quad Bayer thing, all that, because you probably won't even get use out of that. Those ends up being 100 megabyte files. You get a lot of great details, but if you're just doing this for yourself, those details won't matter. At that point, if you're buying that gear, you're way past this. You know what you're doing, and you know if you need it or not. So just use that camera in your pocket. Jared uses an old Android. It's like 4 years old, so his scans look as good as mine. So there's that. So here's a couple more scans as well. I mean, this was Scanamaze. I think I actually did this vehicle with Recon 3D. Recon 3D, the great thing about that as well on the iPhone is we do use the active LiDAR sensor to fill in like these white spaces. Because if there's no texture, you're not going to get something. So that's something we didn't really touch on either. There's no texture, nothing visibly different from image to image on that surface. It might get dropped in the photogrammetry. But we use an active LiDAR sensor in Recon 3D and Point Precise if you have a LiDAR-enabled iPhone. And you can capture all those great blank spaces. And again, Scanamaze, I think I used for all of these. And again, they were all from video. Not a single one of these were image stills. Even this Nike, look at the textures I got on that. But I just moved really slow using video, and then I did this little thing with different software to make it look cool. But you can get a lot of geometry. You just got to be really close to it. So I think we've kept people long enough. We don't want to go for a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast length here. But anyways, I say go out and scan something. If you guys are watching this, we posted this again on the Every Point. We'll be on the Every Point YouTube channel. It'll be on the Computer Vision Decoded podcast. You can just search for that on, I think, all major podcast apps. Just make sure you get the guide in the show notes to follow along the visuals. And then also, if again on LinkedIn, you can rewatch this at any time. But if you scan something with one of those 3 apps and use hashtag EveryPoint, that's the company that's sponsors this. They're the ones who made this happen. If you use that hashtag, I'll be monitoring that, and I'd be happy. You might just make a showcase on the EveryPoint social media channels, and people can see what you got. So just have a lot of fun with that. I'm going to check the comments to make sure I haven't been watching them too closely. Is there any apps planning for Nerf output? I know there is an app coming out called Luma AI, or I think it's called that. It's not our app. It's not one that we've made, but there is apps coming, I would say. From us, I can't tell you. But just know that they're coming. Everything you saw here works pretty much for nerfs too, because at the core of it, it's using structure for motion, and that's just us trying to make sense of the world through images and motion and that parallax. And if that is like the first step for making a nerf, is figuring out where all those cameras belong in space, and then it turns it into a neural radiance field.
Yeah.
So that could be its own episode for all I know. In fact, I'm probably the expert of the two of us here on that. But just know that, yeah, everything you saw here, try it for a nerf. It should work just fine.
Yeah. And work just fine. And it's even actually, almost beneficial for it, because as you said there, the first step of a nerf is to figure out the pose, the position orientation of those cameras. It's using structure for motion. It's using photogrammetry to figure out how to orient those images within the scene to then do that nerf, visualization. And so the strategies we just talked about today with the camera motion and the strategies for loop closure, and overlap, all of that, it's beneficial whether or not you're doing a point cloud, a triangle mesh, or a nerf. All of these things, just sort of common principles in computer vision and 3D reconstruction.
Yeah. And almost, I believe all the different nerf methods that I've seen published, they all either assume you already have data with camera poses, or they give you some sort of Python script that runs ColeMap usually, which is just an open source structure from motion 3D reconstruction software. And they all they all work the same way as we just showed you here. I mean, there's nothing magic that like one company does that no one else does when it comes to 3D construction. There's some it's like core principles, I'm assuming, Jared, that you learn that they all work the same.
Yep.
However, ColeMap does use loop closure too. So
yes,
the better your camera positions for a nerf, the better it'll look. So
yes.
If your cameras are off, things just won't look right too. So again, loop closure, coming back where you came from, all those things definitely help. And when you run any of these, I think all of the scripts I've seen for preparing your images from nerfs, they all use, there might be different ways ColeMap's running it, but as I've dove into it, they all still will do an occasional check for loop closures as it's trying to figure it out. So loop closures are your friend, gets you really tight data and really good camera poses, really good results. So just have fun with it. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope everyone learned something out of this. This was a heck of an episode. Jared, last thing I would add, if you have questions, put them on this stream or on our YouTube channel. I will prod Jared to answer anything I can't answer. But I mean, I've got 10 years of scan experience. He can explain at the scientific level, but if something's not working out, yeah, post it on this episode. We'd love to even critique them or something, give us some more content. That might be fun, but that'll be fun. And again, this will be on podcast form on YouTube, on the Everypoint channel for YouTube, and again here on LinkedIn. So just look out for that. If you found us through Everypoint or through one of our own personal social channels, we'll be, of course, telling everyone where it's at. And in the show notes, I'll have a link to the guide, and might update that guide occasionally. So I'll make sure I tell people, hey, I've updated that guide, but that guide will be out there forever, or for as long as we can host it, and it'll be free, and hopefully that'll help you set you on your way to doing some 3D reconstructions. And so don't forget to put hashtag Everypoint on one of your scans, and we will might have to showcase it on our website. So thanks everyone, and thanks for coming, Jared, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.